What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic here on the OddsSharper channel, coming to you with a 14-game NBA edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hit my arm. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell. Goes a long way for me on this video. Goes a long way for you. That way you become a president of a great contest going live here at our little negative YouTube ones. It actually hurt a lot more than I anticipated it to, but we're not going to stop. We're going to push on through. NFL was okay today. Hopefully somebody in this second half can catch a touchdown that I need because, well, the touchdowns overall were pretty darn good over the weekend. Saturday ended up, yeah, it was okay. Sunday was okay. It's kind of the story of it. Split 1-1 on the locks. Got the Devon Achane one through. I have no idea how Vegas did not go over Jacksonville and Vegas, but they just decided to go back and forth and turn the ball over at very inopportune times after like 60, 70-yard drives. It sucked. But anywho, let's carry on here. 14 games on Monday in the NBA. Without further ado, producer Jacob, we got to fly. Let's get to the picks. And we begin our boarding walk here. Houston at Charlotte, and Houston on a back-to-back. We have kind of this weird schedule, and this is kind of like reminiscent of NBA Cup week, where you just have an absent Tuesday. Nobody's playing on Christmas Eve. Then the 25th, you have 5 teams playing. And then we just get like freaky naughty again at the back half of this week where, you know, Thursday, there's a lot of people playing. Friday, there's a lot of people. Well, Friday's a pretty consolidated slate. But overall, we've got every team but a couple going here. 14 games on the slate, 28 teams here. It's going to be wild and rowdy. And, oh, somebody decided to throw this out. We've got ourselves Charlotte not on a back-to-back. And that's the only thing that's keeping me away from betting this at this point in time. And why is that? Well, rest kind of matters around this time, although you can kind of play it full blast. You know, everybody's got it off on Tuesday. And then we already know the teams that are going to be playing on Wednesday. And Houston is not one of them. So they will have a long abbreviated break here on the back half of this week. Whatever. Houston minus 6.5, just going to be a lean for me here. Overall, like what they're doing defensively, continuing to just hold things down. But they got a little bit of a break facing an RJ Barrett-less Toronto Raptors there on Sunday. Now you travel from Toronto back to Charlotte. It's just kind of a dicey spot here. I'm going to be staying away. Next up, we've got some massive spreads. One coming up later that's just insane and took forever. But Utah, they're getting 14.5 going up against Cleveland at this point in time. And I do think the return of Lauri Markkanen is at least interesting to me. First off, he should be happy because he was able to get out of Chicago. Well, Cleveland was kind of crippling to a certain extent too. Yeah. He showed out in a major way. And think about how many players have gone through Cleveland. Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen. Oh yeah, look at that. They're in Utah together and not exactly having a blast, but playing a little bit better basketball of late. Problem here is that Cleveland is healthy. And Cleveland healthy is just an absolute gauntlet to be facing. They get Max Strus back. Sam Merrill is questionable, I suppose, if you really want to be specific about it. And Isaac Okoro's dinged up. But Isaac Okoro as opposed to Dean Wade, pretty drastic difference. Dean Wade, one of the more underrated defenders in the NBA, in Cleveland, they're full of defenders, and then they've got guys off the bench with ammunition. They have guards that can play. They have bigs who can play both sides. And, I mean, Evan Mobley, this version of him on the offensive end is starting to get scary. But Lauri Markkanen, he's sitting at 18.5 points. The main thing that keeps me off of pulling the trigger here, minus 125, best available line on DraftKings. You go to 19.5, it's sitting at minus 115. These are just juiced a little bit too much for my liking. There's too much blowout risk. However, I think this is a pretty efficient spread, so I think it's just another stay away spot. I warmed up into it. We go lean, and then, well, I've got like 5.5 plays. I'll explain the half one here because there's something I want to pull the trigger on, but I've pulled the trigger on this in the major way. Boston, 9.5 points that they are giving up here going to Disney World here in Orlando. And if you didn't get the news over the weekend, you have yet another Orlando Magic player with a major injury, only this one is season-ending. Mo Wagner. Yes, Mo Wagner. Both Wagners on the shelf right now. Franz, though, torn oblique. He's estimated to be coming back towards the end of January. We've now got Mo Wagner on the shelf for the season. Left knee injury. Sounds like he's going to get everything repaired. Torn ACL. Absolutely sucks because offensively, he can give them a little bit more than what they get off the bench at the bigs, because Jonathan Isaac, while he's a fantastic real-life player, not exactly there. And I gotta say, everybody's gonna point to, oh, Eric, Cole Anthony just went berserk. They have a lot of offense off the bench. Cole Anthony couldn't break the rotation for the first 2 months. He is such a zero on the defensive end of the floor that there really aren't words for it. And Orlando, they pride themselves on defense. 217.5 total. That's what this game's supposed to be. And yet I don't really see it in any way, shape, or form because Boston, they can play to whatever kind of style they're up against. They can go up against teams that want to play gauntlet defense. They can go up against teams that want to put up 240, 245 in the whole total department. Boston's a juggernaut, and it's not going to be who adjusts to what, but also if Jalen Suggs is out and you have to have Cole Anthony start or get, Anthony Black out there for a ton of minutes again, this is an Orlando team that was a fourth quarter away from getting absolutely ran out of the gym last time out. And now it's inside of 10 points against the best team in the NBA. Something doesn't add up here. Now, some people might say, hey, Eric, Jalen Suggs sat for the last game because you knew they were... No, you play to win the game. Duh. Right ankle sprain there for Jalen Suggs. There's no way in God's green earth that I am not going to be betting Boston at this kind of a number. But I also want to throw this in there. Payton Pritchard, we know that these are the kind of games where it gets really, 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 really crazy towards the end of it. You can look to live bet it if you really want and trying to attach it to the money line. It's a little bit too juiced for my liking, but pregame, there's a world where Payton Pritchard 15 plus, 16 plus. I haven't pulled the trigger in a lot of spots, but if you get Jalen Suggs off the floor, look who's playing defense. Anthony Black and Cole Anthony here, more than likely, for a majority of those point guard minutes. It is going to be feasting time for Payton Pritchard in blowout run, and those kind of events. Might be looking at alts, might be looking at other things. He has treated us really well. It's been sad to have to not pull the trigger for the last week or so, but his shooting's cooled off a little bit. No, I don't care. Payton Pritchard, very live, but the play for now, lock button, Boston inside of 10. Next up, San Antonio, Victor Wembanyama and company going to Philly, and I'm very mad at Philly because they tried to really mess with my mind the other day. I don't understand how Joel Embiid plays against a Charlotte team that was resting LaMelo Ball, that was resting, Brandon Miller's actually out, so there's that, and then Mark Williams. How do you roll out Joel Embiid in those kind of spots and then don't play him against Cleveland the next day? It was tilting to no end. It was actually Friday into Saturday. But anywho, I digress. I think this is a good spot to be capitalizing on a number that I think is a little bit too high. We've got Devin Vassell, who's starting now for the San Antonio Spurs, and I really like this piece. I've talked about him for a couple of years now. I think he's just a very interesting basketball player who can be ammunition off the bench, or he can definitely be a decent enough lockdown guy. And Stephon Castle played himself into this rotation in his absence, but Devin Vassell, when he came back, was always going to be that dude. And it's like a perfectly healthy perfectly healthy San Antonio team. Philly, not so much when you have Jared McCain out for the season, but everybody else, their other key members and contributors. I don't think many people were expecting Jared McCain to be a contributor coming into this season, but you got Embiid out there. I think this should be a fun one, but Wemby versus Embiid, yeah, I'm going to definitely side on the Embiid side, but 5.5 is a little bit wide. I've got it at 4. I think when you get to some of these closer spreads, you can embrace that 1.5 points. It's a little bit different when you're talking the difference between 14.5 and 16, things of that nature, like we just covered with Utah and Cleveland. So I did pull the trigger on this. San Antonio, 5.5 points here. And again, knowing that you're going to get a little bit of a break here, that helps guys like Chris Paul, like Harrison Barnes. You can play them those 32, 34, 36 minutes if need be, and give them a little bit more leash because no basketball on Tuesday for anyone. Probably the most frustrating, I said also that I had a half, like something that I'm half interested in. I'm half interested in this. Minnesota taking on Atlanta, and I just wanted to beat my head against a wall watching my Timberwolves. I didn't even bet on them in any capacity, but offensively have just looked abysmal the last couple of games, but it's starting to be a little bit overhyped. And Josh Engelman over here on the Odd Chopper channel and at Stochastic on the fantasy side with me, he pointed something out over on X that I think is very fascinating. The starting 5 for Minnesota. Starting 5, like the traditional Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, you know the traditional starting 5. They're actually outperforming in terms of plus minus the New York Knicks starting 5, which I thought was pretty shocking because you watch the games and you feel like the sky's falling from time to time, but I think that's more of just the sentiment coming off of the expectations that they were going to elevate play, that things were going to continue. But don't forget, a number of things happened this summer. One, well, not just later into the season for Anthony Edwards, but the Olympics were pretty high octane. You have USA, France, you had a lot of extra basketball for a lot of pieces in the NBA, and you didn't necessarily have like the summers to gain that rapport. And don't forget also, it basically happened right before the season started that we pulled bait and we acquired Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and we ship off Cat. So there hasn't been a huge adjustment period, but there was a major adjustment period for just about everything that Rudy Gobert's had in his life, and eventually it kind of evens out. Now, Rudy Gobert also couldn't be on the floor at times for France during the Olympics. That doesn't inspire greatness or confidence in me, but I think we're starting to get into that territory where Minnesota is undervalued. So I'm going to make this more of like a parlay piece here, purely because we've got some news on the Atlanta side. Trae Young questionable. Yes, he confirmed matters. I think if you ended up having him out, this would move to 5.5 or so. Now, defensively, we know he's kind of a zero. He's not going to be like the 3 or 2.5, 3 that some other star players in the NBA might be. But I think Minnesota money line kind of makes that an interesting parlay piece. I haven't bet this yet. That's why it's a lean light. But I have a lot of interest in finding something here, anything here, and also I think Jalen Johnson, 22.5, 23.5 points plus assists. Pretty darn live if Trae Young is out. This is very, very interesting. Brooklyn taking on Miami, and it's been a while, friends. I haven't brought it up. Have I brought it up once this year, producer Jacob? I know I haven't bet it. He's shaking his head because he knows. He knows where I'm going with this one, and I'm sure there was a part of him because we kind of have the same thing. We kind of Ben Simmons stands to a certain extent. Now, Ben Simmons cannot be your best player. He can't be your second best player. He can't be your third best player, but Ben Simmons can be a winning basketball player when healthy, which is, like 5% of the time. Anywho, you have no Dennis Schroeder there, and you look at some of these rates as you adjust for the absence of Dennis Schroeder, there is a lot to be gained to be into more minutes like a guy with Mr. Ben Simmons. And what can we possibly do with it? Well, historical prop data, that is one of my favorite things to dive through. And while I haven't bet this yet, plus 330 is his opening number to double-double. Plus 1,100 is opening number to triple-double. Oh my goodness. We are getting into those minutes territories, and knowing that you're going to get an abbreviated couple of days off, knowing that Ben Simmons won't have to, sit out on a back-to-back or things of that nature. He played 32 minutes against Toronto on the 19th. That is a season high of minutes by a pretty large margin. They have pretty much hard capped him all season. So for him to have the upside to get to 32 minutes, I think is insane potential value here. I'm waiting for other books to roll out these numbers. That's the reason I haven't bet this yet. But Ben Simmons better than plus 300 to double-double here? Yeah, we don't even need the points at certain points. I mean, he's averaging basically 6, 6, and 6. Ooh, that's kind of devil's number. But anyhow, Ben Simmons, more minutes. Very, very interesting for both of those props. I think they're bettable right now. Nothing really is popping here. I didn't even see a line, producer Jacob. Where'd you even find this? Where did you find this? Plus 14.5 on the Toronto side, taking on the Knicks. He's special. He's talented. I had a couple of offshore lines that I was taking a look at because, this was just a hard one to track down because Toronto played basketball without RJ Barrett today. And that made things very difficult. No public books really throwing this one out there, but I did set a line myself. So this is actually going to be fun because I'm pulling up my sheet. It always slows down my computer to a drastic extent because, well, it's a big file. So here we go. We're going to do this 1 second, carry the one. All right. So I had this at 13.5 here on the Knicks side, obviously favored by 13.5. And that was with RJ Barrett at 24 minutes. So again, I think this is straddling more towards RJ Barrett being out than being in here. And I think with an illness, you just have no idea. Maybe it was something just wanted to be cautious on a back-to-back. We now have started to have some dominoes turn in terms of the trade market. Dennis Schroeder obviously being the first one to fall, but there's going to be others that follow suit. And Toronto, they have a young core. They also have some guys in like Kelly Olynyk, Emmanuel quickly that they paid, but they could go elsewhere. We could see RJ Barrett move elsewhere. RJ Barrett is Canadian. I'm sure he probably wants to stick around, but you never really know. High taxes. We got ourselves Toronto at 14.5. I have to just kind of stay away from everything in this game now that I've covered it. So next is what I put in the box because there's really not a lot to mine out of here. Pretty efficient at first glance. Glance at this though, friends, 50% off for the holidays and, well, not just the holidays, all the time. If you guys want to jump into the premium Discord, we've got so many good things going on, so little time. And I want to get you all the bets in the NBA and the NFL and MLB when it comes back in March. I'm sure I'm going to have some golf bets along the ride too. 50% off. Traditionally, my package is worth $20 per week, $50 per month. But if you use Lindy 50 down at the link below, that becomes $10 for your first week. $25 for your first month. less than $1 a day to be able to come in, check out the bets, kick it with a great Discord. We've got people live betting in there all the time. We've got people chatting up about their fantasy teams. I've got a DFS channel for the people who are looking to chat a little bit about cash games. Had 2 really good weeks in the NFL streets until, well, week 16. That happened, thanks Michael Penix. And I don't know, I guess Atlanta defense kind of slowed that game down. But Lindy 5-0, would love to see you guys in tails over at Odd Shopper. Alrighty, y'all, back to the picks. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, as I have very little to talk about until further notice. And that's kind of something the night before. We're always trying to extract value. I'm always trying to read the tea leaves. Sometimes there's just not tea leaves to be read. I think this is one of those prime spots because Milwaukee doesn't play on Wednesday because they just got done with the NBA Cup. There is a very strong chance that they give somebody rest. Now, Chris Middleton, he played on a back-to-back. That was kind of wild. They rolled out Ryan Rollins, Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Middleton, and now I think Giannis with the Q tag is more likely to play. It is listed as back spasms, but Damian Lillard, I'm very, very certain, does not play basketball here against Chicago in this spot. And that makes it a pretty competitive game. And obviously, -1.5 if you had Giannis in, you'd feel pretty good about backing that on the Milwaukee side. You'd feel pretty terrible about having that ticket in the event that Giannis was out. That is for sure. So that's kind of my main deal with this entire game in general, is that it's predicated on a massive piece of news, something that will move the line 3-4 points, no doubt about it. 230.5 is a big number, though, in terms of the total. I've already got it down around 236. I think it's playable-ish. Again, it's just on the cusp of being positive EV, so I'm going to stay away from it for now, but if it starts lurking into 235, 234.5, then I'll feel like I really missed the boat because I could see this total being bet down, Giannis getting ruled in, and good things happening on the Milwaukee side. One thing I've been doing a little bit less over the course of this season is bringing a lot of the team stats. It's been a lot more injury-based. It's been a lot more individual player-based, and I'm doing a lot of stuff on the back end here to account for certain rotations. What's your main 5 going to be? But when you get major pieces like Ja Morant, who's now off of the injury report, and we just saw them annihilate Atlanta without him, Memphis is a fully operational Death Star. Number 2 in the West right now, finding ways to be extremely successful. Now, the injury bug last year was very unkind to them, so I'm not that surprised. I'm a little surprised to see the Clippers playing as good a ball as what they are on the other side of this one as well. And that's making a very interesting handicap because I think this game is very competitive. And I think this is like your borderline lock play because I don't agree with this total. 232.5. The more that I put Ja Morant in, I expected the pace to just ratchet up. But no, Scottie Pippen Jr. has been doing an awesome job in that second unit, as has one of the more underrated players in the entire NBA. Tweeted out about it on Friday. It was Santi Aldama. Holy mother of God, Santi Aldama is very good off of the bench in like a 24, 26-minute capacity. And that's going to be the capacity he plays for this Memphis team, barring injury going forward. Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, I am worried because the strength of schedule has been super, super easy for Memphis to this point. 30th in an adjusted offensive schedule, 27th in adjusted defensive schedule, and 29th overall in my modeling. But with that being said, this total's a little bit high because I think defensively Memphis can still bring the boom. I hate those TikTok videos. Why did I just cite those? Oh, I'm so embarrassed to be me. 232.5. Let's move on. Little Rizzler this one. Portland taking on Dallas. And this is my favorite prop so far night before, other than the Ben Simmons ones, because I think Ben Simmons ones are going to get played once we get more lines out. Wanted to always test the single game parlay thing, although I think FanDuel fixed their algorithm. I haven't found as many inefficiencies this season building it out by hand in the single game parlay section as what I did last year, because it was just flooded with inefficiencies. Even at the beginning of this season was coupling the points with the threes, and we were making extra money just for the same thing that we were looking for. Well, look at this. We got ourselves Anthony Simons sitting at 19.5 points, which sounds like a big number because, Eric, you know, Anthony Simons, he's only averaging this and he's only averaging that and he's averaging that with a baseball bat. But Anthony Simons at 17.7 points per game has played a lot of really uncompetitive basketball. He's shot less than 33% from three, 41.2% from the field. He has not been good so far this season. Positive regression was coming, and I think it came in the form of getting Toumani Camara in that starting unit, getting more minutes for DeAndre Ayton out there to make games more competitive. And then On the Dallas side here, again, they're 10-point favorites. Kind of don't agree with it. I've got it at 9, but that's not enough of a difference for me to actually go out of my way and bet it. Luka Doncic is questionable. I don't know what to make of it. It was a left heel contusion. He had been out for a couple of games here. Nothing drastic, but obviously we had that Kyrie lock that could have looked unbelievable. And then the next day I'm like, oh, you know what? His threes actually look pretty good. And he couldn't have hit the broadside of a barn. Over 2.5 threes, he goes for 2. Pain and suffering personified. But I think Anthony Simons is very interesting here. While Luka is a better defender than he gets credit for, slowish, sluggish, he's got good hands. He's very good at figuring out. He's just a smart basketball player. Most generational talents are. Anthony Simons, 20-plus points is -106. Inside of that number over on Caesars, the usage will continue to rise. The minutes in some of these competitive spots, now that they've got a healthy team again, Robert Williams back out there, winning basketball player, Donovan Clingan, who can play those backup, 13, 14 minutes a game at the center position up against, Daniel Gafford. I think Anthony Simons 20-plus is very, very intriguing. Plus the pace, a little bit up here for Dallas, ever so slightly, but nothing like it was 2 years ago where it was terrible pace. But yeah, Anthony Simons 20-plus points. Washington at Oklahoma City here in this one, and 18.5. 18.5. Yeah, it's a big spread. Bilal Coulibaly is questionable. They're really not going to be mining out tons of minutes for Jonas Valanciunas anymore because he is on the trade block. I don't know. It better be a really good defensive team that trades for him and says, hey, I need some offense, or somebody who can play 15 minutes a game. But he's playing 9, 15, 15. I mean, he is basically collecting game checks at this point in time. What do you want me to do with this game? I mean, it's just an absolute... It's like the most efficient game period you could possibly run into. I'll lay 18.5. Do you want to lay 18.5? I don't want to lay 18.5, although they're probably going to cover 18. 3 games to go. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bells. We have Phoenix taking on Denver. Denver on a back-to-back here. They went to overtime, and I think that's kind of something to take note of. 132-129 going up against New Orleans. You had Jokic off to a really, 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 really slow start, but they played a 9-man rotation, and Russell Westbrook played 36 minutes off the bench. They sent Michael Porter to the frickin' Shadow Realm. 23 minutes for Michael Porter here, and now he's going to step foot onto the floor at home against Phoenix here as they travel back from New Orleans. I don't know what to make of everything in this game. I think the Phoenix side is probably the ideal one, purely because the line hasn't moved since this game went to overtime. Obviously, they're professional athletes, Eric. There's not a ton of data that supports, but rest can be a huge thing. And, you talk about trends. I'm not a big trends guy. I like to look at the numbers. I like to be able to individualize what I'm looking at. And then also there's definitely some cohesion there. Getting Michael Porter Jr. off a floor defensively, where it's not going to look as good offensively, but Russell Westbrook, man, he's really playing himself into some minutes for this Denver squad. I think they're probably going to end up starting him sooner rather than later alongside a Jamal Murray. Yeah, that's probably something they should be doing here right now. With Christian Brown out, that's something that they did. And I think Russell Westbrook, 6-1 as his starter. It's unbelievable seeing Russell Westbrook find it. Might as well be with Nikola Jokic and company, because, well, they're going to find a way to utilize your skill set as best as possible. But Phoenix +7, that's going to be the side of it I'm here. It's purely a rest thing, but I'm not going to bet anything more than likely in this game. That's sad. Obviously, no Devin Booker. Kind of matters too. Indy getting 5.5, taking on Golden State. And I think this game is very close to being a play for me. But yet again, Indy on a back-to-back here. And Indy put the gauntlet down on Sacramento. They did not light the beam in Sacramento. And now they're taking on Golden State, a hop, skip, and a jump up there in Northern California. And I think the total, you could maybe talk me into 231.5. But overall, this is a game that you just kind of look through each pieces defensively. And when you have a piece like Draymond Green who's sitting there questionable, it's so hard for me to pull the trigger on it, because this would be a pretty efficient number with him in. I think he's closer to being out for what it's worth. So if you need something else for your card, over 231.5, have this closer to 234. It's just short of that number. It's technically playable as is, but I know how many props I'm going to have in play. I know how many questions from the premium Discord are coming. And hey, you have any other questions for me, hit me up on X at Eric Lindquist. Would be happy to let you know what I do play or don't play. And our last game of the night, this one baffled me multiple times over, because I think if there were one team that you just knew was going to be on Christmas, it was the Los Angeles Lakers. Didn't even need to look at the schedule. Didn't even if the Lakers are going to play on Christmas. But what I didn't know is that they're on the road in Golden State for Christmas. And Draymond Green sitting on the injury report just a second ago. Feels like a little bit of a, a little finagling there, a little bit of a push and pull situation going on. Now, I don't think that that's just a foregone conclusion now that we get LeBron and Anthony Davis resting, but I do know more people watch Christmas Day basketball than are going to watch Monday night against the Detroit Pistons basketball. You also need to win basketball games in the West, but the priority is health for Anthony Davis and Mr. LeBron James. And LeBron James, after taking a couple of games off from personal leave, came back. He looked awesome. He cashed some nice tickets. We got a plus 170 ticket through on the money line against Sacramento. I've been targeting Sacramento pretty efficiently well, but I think in this spot, I'm kind of looking at the inverse. Detroit getting six. I think this is pretty darn interesting. Jaden Ivey came back and looked better than ever. You get that core starting five for the first time in a long time. Well, last game, and they look great. But Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren, Malik Beasley off the bench playing really exceptional basketball, shooting it well. It's almost like my Timberwolves could use that here at the moment. Detroit +6. I like it to get out of here because you get one of those guys resting. Ooh, this line is going to close way inside of this number. And that does it for a Monday edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks in the NBA streets. Head to the comment section below. Let me know your favorite plays that exist on the board here. We got NFL Lindy's for Monday night as well. New Orleans taking on Green Bay as 2 touchdown favorites. Well, New Orleans isn't, Green Bay is. Check that out as well here on the Odd Chopper channel, giving you the ins and outs, my lean like lock from that game. Yeah, I have nothing else to say. Producer Jacob, thank you so much. I'll see you guys for Christmas. Yes, Christmas edition of Lindy's. Looking forward to that. Tuesdays off. Unbelievable stuff. These schedule makers are out of their minds. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the NBA streets on Monday.